All right. It says I'm live. How's it going, everybody? Got great lighting here by the windows. It's about 40, 45 degrees. Very wet. It's drizzling right now. That's one nice thing about this old chicken coop is because it has two ceilings. It's got this main one, and then it has the steep angled steel roof. It deadens the sound of heavy rain really well. If we would only have one roof here and we got a downpour, it could be so noisy that it would freak these guys out quite a bit. And then they'll pile up on each other and they'll suffocate from lack of oxygen, obviously. But that's that. These Plasson waterers right here save us a lot of time on chores. So these guys are drinking a little over 5 gallons a day. So the water tube is hooked up to the bottom of this bucket. So all I have to do is take the top off, fill it with water, and that's done. Don't have to dump out any warm water from these gallon waterers. Just fill this up. They always have fresh water. I'll dump out the rim of this Plasson drinker twice a day, once in the morning, once at night, to keep any poop or bedding out of it so it's nice and clean. That's about it. Everything else is the same. The feeders are the same. They're all laying together here. It seems that they start doing that even if they're warm. Once they're about a week to a week and a half old, it seems that they'll start clumping together in one big group if they're all resting. I don't know why this is. Even if you have enough heat and it's warm throughout the shelter, they'll all just clump up together. Seems like they start doing that at about a week and a half, 2 weeks old. So you'll see same thing over here. Same thing over here. Even though the whole pen is warm, they'll just clump together for some reason. But the only thing that changes from what I can tell between 1 week old, which was my last live video, and 2 weeks old, is they're a lot bigger and they have more feathers. But in the brooder wise, nothing is different except I'm down to one light. And in fact, I'm going to turn that off today. They are 2 weeks old yesterday. So I'll look at the nighttime temperature. It looks like it's about 40 degrees or so. The body heat from these guys is going to keep this shelter probably at about 55 or so, 55 or 60 down in the pen. So I'm just going to unplug the last, right there, unplug the last heater, the last heat lamp, and start hardening these guys off so that when they go out onto pasture the beginning of next week, they will already be acclimated to the weather. And right now the 10-day forecast looks like it's going to be 65, 70 degrees during the day once these guys are out on pasture for the first 3 days or so, and like 45 degrees at night. And it doesn't look like rain right now, but that could change. So that's like the perfect weather to put these guys out on pasture, because the first 2 to 4 days they're learning where they're going to be sleeping, and you want them to sleep underneath the roof, because if you get 2 inches of rain at night, you don't want them to all get wet and get cold. And so once they're 2 weeks old, I'm starting to think about a week ahead. I'm thinking about when I'm going to put them out on pasture. I'm keeping an eye on the weather to make sure that it is chicken friendly. If it was going to be freezing temperatures during the day once they were 3 weeks old, and if it was going to be terrible windy, or if we were going to get snow or something like that, I would probably hold them in the brooder longer. It has been a very cold spring here in Michigan. The frost just came out of the ground like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. and it hasn't been above 70 degrees yet, and it is May. I had to think for a second. It's May. But the weather looks good for when these guys are going to be out on pasture, and so I am tidying up the chicken shelters out in the field. Did a few modifications, tightened up a couple of loose screws. This week I'm going to be going and checking their waterers that I stored in the shed out there over winter, making sure that the mice haven't eaten out the water hose hole at the bottom of the 5-gallon pails. They'll do that sometimes, especially if there's feed in them. They will eat 5-gallon pails. Mice will eat these totes if there's feed inside of them. Even these ones that are kind of heavy duty, they'll chew right through the side of it if there's feed inside of it. That's about it. We're going to use the same waterers in the shelters as we're using here, the same feeders in the beginning when they're in here. And the reason you do that is because these guys will sleep by their feeders. I don't know if Freedom Rangers do this, but Cornish Cross, if you put your chicks out into your shelter and you put the same feeder out there, they will sleep by that feeder. And so I use that to our advantage when we put them out into the pasture. And I'm going to put their feeder far back underneath the roof of that Joel Salatin chicken tractor. And the reason I do that is because they'll all group around that shelter and they'll sleep there. And I want them to learn to sleep underneath the roof. And so fill that feeder full of feed, stick it far back underneath the shelter so that for the first 3 or 4 nights they're sleeping next to that feeder underneath the roof. And then after that I can bring it out, and then hopefully they'll keep sleeping underneath the roof so that if we get rain at night, they'll be sheltered. But what you really want to look for is about 3 or 4 days of no rain and good temperatures when you put them out on pasture. Okay? That's what I've been told. I didn't just come up with that number. People who are a lot smarter than me and who have been doing this a lot longer say, wait for a good stretch of weather. 3 days is ideal. Good temperatures, no rain. You want it to be an idyllic, pastured setting, just a pristine scene, right? Like magazine cover photos right when they go out, so it's less stressful. Because a transition like this, putting 3-week-old birds, they're not 3 weeks old yet, but next week, you want that transition to be very smooth, really smooth. So it's a good idea to use the same feeder and the same waterer so that when you transition them out, they're familiar with that feeder and they're going to eat as much as they have been eating. Their feed consumption will drop the first day or two as they're stressed and as they are eating all this green material that they're now exposed to. But you want to use the same stuff so that they're not scared of their water, they're not scared of the feeder. They'll go, they'll drink, they'll eat, they'll be healthy. We want it to be as stress-free as we can make it. But I saw a few comments here. Finally caught you live. Hey John, good to see you. Yeah, it's very sporadic. Maybe I should come up with a schedule, but thank you for joining us. Smalt. Sounds like a German last name. Ed Johnson. How many chickens are you putting in a chicken tractor at once? 75. Yep, 75. And they're in a 10-foot by 12-foot, so that's 120 square feet. So you figure about 2 square foot per bird, about. So if you were just making a shelter for your house and you were just raising 50 birds, you could decrease the size of the 10 by 12 by 30%, and you'd still have the same, pardon me, you'd still have the same square footage per bird. and it'd be easier to move. And if I was just raising chicken for my family, that might be what I would do. If you're just raising 50, make yourself an 8 by 10, something like that, or an 8 by 8, and you could grow 8 times 8, 64, right? So you could grow 30 birds in that. Or if you do a 10 by 10, that'd be 100 square feet, and you could do 50 birds in that, and it'd be a lot lighter to move. So you could do that too. It doesn't have to be a Joel Salatin style chicken tractor. If you're older, or if you build it heavy, it's hard to move. That's one thing about it. If you build it like Joel Salatin, using 1 by material or 1/2 inch material, and you use aluminum, it's a lot lighter. So that's it. 2 weeks old, as you can see, they are jumping up on top of my bedding tote now. So at about this age, they can hop up that high. Even though they're fat Cornish cross, they can jump about 2 feet high. So that is one thing. If you hold them longer inside of your brooder, and if you're using a lot of bedding, by the time they reach 3 weeks old, your containment wall is going to be like 1.5 feet high, and they can jump right over on top of it. So keep that in mind. Make sure that there's no holes that they could jump into and not be able to get out. These guys are big. These guys probably weigh a pound, probably like 1.2 pounds probably, but they can still jump. They can still jump a lot. So I think that's it. That's some things to think about. Voice crack there. There's some things to think about when you are raising them. The only other thing is I still gotta put feed in their feeders and put a little bit of bedding down. I am using sawdust. There. Where are you? Right there. We get sawdust from a sawmill. It's a lot cheaper than shavings. And so I started using those once they were a week old. They work fine. They work fine. And it's free. I get them for free because I work on a farm that has sawdust, and I've only used like 2 of these totes with sawdust in it, and it's gotten me like a week. It seems to last longer than the shavings once they're this age. It's working really good. We've only lost one so far, one cockerel. It looked like some sort of heart failure because the skin was like a light purple. Usually when that happens, it means that their heart explodes or something goes wrong and they bleed out internally very quickly. And the Cornish cross are prone to that, especially when they're larger. And in splitting up our chickens, 150 pullets, females, 150 cockerels or males, we find that the cockerels, the males that grow out faster, make up about 70% of our mortalities, and most of that is heart attacks. So that was an interesting thing to find out when we split them up by gender. So I think that's it. If you guys comment any questions on this video, if you're watching it in the future, they'll pop up on my phone and I can answer them. Thank you so much for watching. My channel's starting to grow now. That's pretty cool. People are watching a couple of the videos. That's awesome. Been doing this for a long time, 3 years, and it's finally starting to pop off a little bit. So that's cool. I'm glad that I can help people learn what I wanted to learn sooner to save them some work and mistakes maybe. So that's it, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and get these guys situated, get them fed, put a little more bedding down, and get on with the day. Thanks for watching, guys. Surprise video. We have pigs coming, but that's different. Teaser. See you guys on the next one. Take care.